So friends, we consider a statement by Conrad itself regarding the short story form that he adopted, and let's consider this particular comment of his before we start discussing the short story that we have picked up. So about this choice of fictional settings, that is quite important. Conrad has said that the problem has arisen on board a ship where the conditions of complete isolation from all land entanglements make it stand out with a particular force and coloring. What do we mean by land entanglements? Land entanglements, you you leave a home which is made of bricks, and which stands where it is all the time, and you have a family, so that is an entanglement. You have a circle of friends, that is an entanglement. You also have the market somewhere near your house, which is an entanglement, because you are in touch with the shopkeepers. And then if there is a school or a college you attend, then there are teachers and students as entanglements. There are friends also. So friendship, relationship, acquaintance with people, thinking about the norms, all these are land entanglements, not sea entanglements. You see, when you are on the land, then you have the family, but you have no family on the ship. In the ship, you are just all the time working. You sleep there, you wake up there, you eat there, you drink there, you gossip there, and the ship is changing its place all the time. Therefore, there is a kind of understanding about life on the ship, which is different from the land entanglements, as I have explained them, so that make it stand out with a particular force and coloring, because your world is there on the ship. Your world is there surrounded by the waters which are moving all the time. The waves, which sometimes are calm, then they can be stormy, they can be furious, and they can threaten you, with all kinds of possibilities. Therefore, you are never certain about life, and you have forgotten in the meantime also the place from where you came. So those entanglements also are gone. So what I say is, and this is suggested by the comment of Conrad, that when you are free from land entanglements, they are there on the ship, and then you are all the time uncertain, then your stamina with respect to bearing the uncertainty, that becomes more and more strong, and it gives a kind of force to your language. It gives it gives you a kind of shade that is different from the shade that you might have received or got from the atmosphere of the geographical place, like a town, a city, or a village. So there is a kind of freedom when you are on board the ship, and when you are watching the moving water all the time, and your mind is all the time engaged by threats as well as pleasures. There is a kind of thrill being at the on board the ship, and that thrill is generally missing when you are locked up in the precincts of the land that he's talking about. So now I go to the next area, and that area is closer to the short story that we will discuss. He has these themes in mind when he writes short stories. For the short stories, themes are very important. It may not be the case with the novel, which also has a theme, but the novel is more generally a description. The novel generally is a capturing of the vastness of and the variety of life, and there is philosophical observation, and there are dialogues, and there are places, descriptions there all the time. There are depictions of situations there, and those depictions change. So that is what the novel is. But so far as the short story is concerned, there your themes have to be much more specific, much more particularized, much more direct. So ambitions to earn money, this is one theme. That his theme, the theme that he pursues in his writing, is that people think of earning money, and they have that ambition. They are driven by that ambition. So what do you think of this? Should we have this ambition of earning money? Earning money in order to serve the basic interests of life is fine, But then if the ambition is to earn money and that's the only ambition you have, then you are actually an instrument in the hands of society, the economic forces, and which means that he is talking about something very serious in life. He is telling you that then you are driven not by your instincts, by your desires, by your friendships, by the value of happiness, but you are driven by the instinct of getting more and more money. So you become very boring. One becomes very boring if one is all the time thinking about increasing money more than he or she requires. Then the other theme that he tries to present for the benefit of the reader is the general sense of greed, which is once again an extension of ambition to earn money. So greed means that you want to completely become a prisoner of getting more and more of money, and you're thinking about it. It has entered your soul. It has entered your mind, and you start loving the money. And if there is some threat to money, then you can do anything harmful to the society around you, and sometimes which is harmful to you yourself. So greed is one of the worst enemies of humanity, and he is thinking of greed as a theme that he will lay bare, that he will share with the audience, and he will tell its effects directly. Not in the sense of speech, in the sense of comment, but in the sense of the damage it does to the personality. So if he presents a person who is greedy, then he will present him in such a way that the behavior gives a sense of disgust to us. So that is what the greed does to a human being. It destroys the person's good qualities, what we call qualities of happiness and freedom, and therefore the person is not worth talking to. This is what you get as the impression from such a person who is driven by greed. The third is moral disaster. Moral disaster again is that you don't follow morality. The morality is not merely a clean life and all those things. Morality also means that you should consider other people as your friends. You have to be a good neighbor. You have to be loving to your relatives, to your mother, to your father, to your wife, to your other people, friends, class fellows. And that morality is the social morality, and it's something that is nice and that spreads a sense of harmony and satisfaction in life. So if disaster of that kind happens, then the person is totally shattered. So he can sometimes show a psychology which is the psychology of a person who is shattered. I particularly emphasize this particular thing because this has happened to the main character in his great novel or short story called The Heart of Darkness. And then I use the word that he uses, equivocal world of anarchists. You have to understand it. Who are anarchists? Anarchists are people who don't have any sense of order to offer. If there is a government and there is a state in society, and you don't believe in the state and the government, and you want everybody to go by one's whims and fancies, then you are an anarchist. So it's a tendency, and the writer Joseph Conrad abhors it. He says that anarchy means that you have no logic in your mind, that you have no likes and dislikes, and your mind, your behavior is not defined by any particular pattern that will attract other people towards, draw people towards you or you towards them. Then the police. So police is, so far as this writer is concerned, is always driven by doubt and suspicion, and it's very insensitive most of the time in all countries of the world. And so far as this writer Joseph Conrad is concerned, he will show that the police people are driven by suspicion so much that they lose that basic thing called sympathy, thing called compassion that is generally there in the neighbors. Politicians, again, because politicians have the inspiration coming from the spread of personal influence. That's what politicians do. That's what they are. And if sometimes their personal interests, their political interests are served by creating dissatisfaction among the citizens, then the politicians might gain. But somebody loses, and the writer, being a sensitive person, would like to be careful about presenting politics in such a manner that it's a wonderful thing. Of course, politics is important in life. Without with politics being pursued by people in life, you can't think of larger interests such as happiness and freedom. But then the same politics also makes certain people in the country, in a society, as people who will work only for their own gain, and for that gain they can become immoral. So that is what the politicians do in life, and he captures them, and he captures them not only in one country but in many countries, in fact all the countries in the world, and he just calls them as a kind of community of people who are always inspired by ideas that are not good for certain sections in society, and generally they are good only for the ruling classes. And agents provocateurs, what is that word? That word is slightly difficult to understand. The agent provocateur is a person who is not genuine, who is not honest, and the person has a different kind of an agenda. He talks very sweetly. He always gives makes all the right kind of noises, always talks about ideals, but inside himself he is trying to provoke people. He is trying to create trouble in society. So he can tell lies, he can use those lies in order to irritate some sections and help some other sections in life, and because he is always hidden. So he lives two lives. The agent provocateur always lives two lives: the life of empty morality and the life of real evil. So evil is the agenda, and the right word is the trick that the person is using. And therefore, if you have some troublemakers, and those troublemakers are hidden in society, then they are called in English language agents provocateurs. So he talks about them. And why I suggest these themes as important for him, because that made him a very disturbed person. This writer, Joseph Conrad, was a disturbed person. He was unhappy, and these trends were increasing more and more at the turn of the century. When the 20th century began, then you could hardly trust anybody in society. If you lived in a village or a small town, then you could not depend on the advice of anybody, because that person has one's own axe to grind. So these are the themes, and these themes would definitely have left an impact on him. He would never talk about happiness, because happiness was not there. It was not there in the genes of the society at that point of time. And such a writer was important because he was all the time alert. He was observing things seriously, and then he was finding that genuine people generally were missing. And if you read his short stories, if you read his novels, then you'll always see that he's talking about spies, he's talking about informers, he's talking about the police brutalities, he's talking about politicians saying one thing and meaning another, and they actually don't want to create any harmony, but they want to in fact be enemies of harmony. So these are anarchists. So police, politicians, agent provocateurs. And I also have this word in mind, and that's there on the screen. If you can see, equivocal world. What is the equivocal world? Actually, we generally use the word unequivocal, clear. But what is equivocal? Equivocal is that which is not clear, which is hidden, which is two-headed. One head this way, the other head that way. We have in English language, and we have in the behavior of people, this particular thing, this and on the other hand. So if you are using a sentence, and if you are using 4 or 5 sentences, and always you say, well, I say this, but on the other hand, I say something else. That is called equivocation. So the world is equivocal that he captures in the society, and therefore he is quite relevant to the 20th century and also to the 21st century in which we live. He died long ago in 1926, but then he lived at a time, as I said in the beginning, which were troubled times. How are they troubled? The First World War begins in 1914. He is alive, and he is in fact has become an established author then. But then World War actually began in 1914, but things were building up 10 or 15 or 20 years earlier, and that's when he was writing those novels that I referred to, and therefore it is there in the air. All these things, all these themes, all these comments that he makes suggested the presence of tendencies at that point of time, and when the World War began, then it was a picture of destruction all around, and when he died, then the World War had been over, and it had left a different world which was completely divided into different segments and parts. Therefore, he could never fix his ideas on anything in his life. So that explains, for us the idea of equivocal. Then we take the story, because the story is important in the light of what I've said. What will the story tell us? Okay, let's begin the story. The story was selected for discussion is that I discussed for selection is the lagoon. What is the lagoon? I think even the word is to be explained. So I take the help of Wikipedia and I give you a quotation so that you understand what lagoon is. A lagoon is a shallow body of water separated from a larger body of water. What is it means that there is a sea, and in that sea some parts have become earth, and therefore people start living there, and there is a small body of water that is around the place, so you live there, but then that body of water is surrounded by the larger sea. So it's a kind of an island, and the island that is cut off from the major sea, and there is a place there where very few people can go. You can't go to a lagoon easily. You have to take a boat, and from the land, then you go to the lagoon. It is a small body of water, and then there can be houses in the lagoon, and beyond that there is a forest. There might be a forest, and beyond that is the large sea. So a lagoon is a shallow body of water separated from a larger body of water by a narrow landform such as reefs, barrier islands, barrier peninsulas, or isthmuses. So these are the different kinds of geography that exist near a lagoon, and lagoon is once again cut off from the social life. Lagoon is cut off from the real life in terms of geography and earth and markets and all those things, and what you see is forests. So it has forests, it has water, it is completely cut off, it has that kind of loneliness, and this particular story is called the lagoon. So there are people who live in the lagoon, and what do they do there? They are cut off, and they spend their time just looking around the place which has only trees, and which also have let's say ghosts, or the feeling of ghosts. What are ghosts? There are no actual ghosts, but then there can be wind, and that wind passes through the forests, through the trees, and it moves the leaves, and at night when there is complete dark and you hear the movement of the leaves, then you feel that some spirits are moving around, and that is what the lagoon is. So in fact I would suggest that this story perhaps I say, no, not actually, perhaps it's talking about the world that he visualized at that point of time, that we lived in the lagoons where there were forests, and there was darkness, and there was complete isolation, and the story itself is called the lagoon. So let's see what the story presents to us. The story appeared in Tales of Unrest. So already know what is on the way, what is coming. People are have unrest somewhere, and that unrest, that disturbance, that disturbed state is captured in different tales, which is the title of the book in which this particular story was published, and this was published in 1898. Once again, I talked about the years building up towards the First World War in Europe, and Europe means the whole world at that time, because Europe was managing the whole world. So even if in the World War some countries were not directly involved, they were indirectly affected. I don't have to go into it. There are other lectures where I discussed, and others of the team also referred to the world as one, but guided mainly by the interests of the Western world. So anyway, Tales of Unrest is a book by him where he talks about the problems that human beings face, and this story is a part of that particular agenda. Okay, the characters in the story are the white man. He is called Tuan, but called only by one character. Other people just call him white man. So why this lack of or absence of identity? Because all white people look white, and even if they talk to you, you didn't understand what they said, because they were colonial power, agents of the colonial power that was there in the countries where they were situated. So this white man is there. What is he doing there? I'll come to that later. The steersman Malay. So it's somewhere near Malaysia, and Malaya is a place, in those days it was called Malaya. And then steers person, so the person is a boatman, and he's steering the boat, and he's a Malay. So this is the second character, the white man. Then there is a Malay, the person who is rowing the boat. Then the other Malay, and this is the right person. This is the person that we have to focus upon. His name is Arsat. And you can see the information. He who repairs a ruined house in the lagoon, that place which is surrounded by forests and which is completely cut off from social life. A ruined house it is, and he is repairing it in order to live it there. And dwells in it, proclaims that he is not afraid to live among the spirits. Spirits are ghosts, so he is not afraid. So that person himself appears to be a kind of ghost. And what is ghostly about him? That in fact raises questions about the life of this person. His name is Arsat. So this is Arsat's story. This is a story that moves around the circumstances of the person called Arsat, that haunt the places abandoned by mankind. That's the place where he lives. So imagine that there will be descriptions in the story. The first 3 or 4 pages talk only about the surroundings, and it's a very powerful description. You have not seen a lagoon. I have not at least seen a lagoon. So I could say that maybe somewhere in the middle of the forest, there will be in the middle of the sea, there will be certain places where the earth was slightly worth making houses on, and it was difficult to reach them, but some people reached there, and then they made houses there, and they lived there all alone, very few. So because you will always require an independent boat to go there, and there will be steersmen that are needed, and this writer is talking about such a scenery. So we come to Arsat, the central character of the story, apart from the white man. And white man is with a capital W and a capital M, which means that his name is white man, even though he is called Tuan. So Arsat's dying with Daimelion with a past. Arsat's wife, actually, as I think this word is missing, Arsat's wife dying with dying wife, Daimelion with a past. It's part of the previous sentence, which means that I am counting the characters there. The first character is the white man, the second character is the steersman, the third character is Arsat, the fourth character is the dying wife, Daimelion with a past. She has a history, but now she is dying. So she is there inside the house. So you can imagine that Arsat lives alone in the lagoon, in that house, which was an ancient house, which was dilapidated and which was repaired by this person, and therefore he had that kind of. Then you have Inchimida. This is a kind of a tribe to which Arsat belongs, and then with many men supporting him in his tribe, who turned enemy to Arsat. So there is a fight between Arsat and the tribe, and Arsat's brother supporting him to the hilt. So there is a central character, there is his brother, there is a tribe which has turned his enemy, and then there is white man who is watching all these. The main character is, as I said earlier, Arsat. The place captured in the story is called the narrow creek that was like a ditch, tortuous, fabulously deep, filled with gloom under the thin strip of pure and shining blue of the heaven. So imagine, the writer is not making any bones about goodness or directness or light or happiness, but he is telling you that the whole thing appears to be a kind of hell in which this person has been living. So immense trees soared up, invisible behind the festooned draperies of creepers. See the powerful words that he is using. There are trees that go very high, sky high, and they are invisible behind the festooned draperies of creepers. So creepers are there in front, and they look like draperies, and behind them is the forest, and within the forest, at the middle of the forest, is the house where lives a man called Arsat, and he has a wife who will ultimately die. The white man and Arsat together weave the story. Arsat's beginning words spoken to Tuan, the white man, are, and I think I'll wind up with this particular comment. Therefore, I shall speak to you of love, speak in the night, speak before both night and love are gone, and eye of day looks upon my sorrow and my shame, upon my blackened face, upon my burnt up heart. Now see, there's not a single thing, indicating happiness, say a single thing indicated sympathy or compassion. It's all a black world, a world which is dark, a world which is evil, and Arsat has borne all this himself on his nerves, and he has a wife whom he is tending, who is looking after at that time with his own effort, but who will ultimately die. He is talking about his wife. How shall we interpret the statement of his? The story is a tale of love, courage, pain and suffering. It is told by Arsat, the white man Tuan being the listener. So Arsat is the narrator, and he is looking after things like this. The latter authenticates the content of the story by his comments, his agreements with Arsat, and the lagoon is referred to in the story, symbolical of the world Conrad lived in. So what do we make of this story? The story is actually desolate in its form, and it becomes a kind of a symbol of the life in the early 20th century when this story was composed. It was actually composed in the last part of the 20th century, the last decade of the 20th century. So you can see that this kind of a picture of life is actually damning. It is a picture of life that is threatening. It's a picture of life that should not be lived, that should be protected from all the forces that have caused Arsat's problems, Arsat's life. But then there is also heroism that Arsat all alone is looking after his wife, who will finally die, because he says that he wants to live by love. So in a way it's a love story, but it's a story where love is impossible to enjoy, impossible to capture, impossible to go by. So I think I hope you have seen the content of the story. It doesn't have many episodes, but it has a description which is telling, which is fearsome, which is threatening, and which finally unsettles us, and we start thinking more and more about it and wonder. Thank you.